Yes, ma'am.
Will your immigration policies or your proposed immigration policies help or hurt small Iowa communities like Lamar's, like Storm Lake, that depend really heavily on immigrant populations for their economies?
Well, the total immigration policy I think will probably help you, not hurt you, because the total immigration policy starts with get control of the border by January 1, 2014, which I think we can do, but requires a really, this goes back to the questions asked a while ago, requires a very focused effort. Second, I think English should be the official language of government. Third, I think that we should have, to become an American citizen, you should have to have much more knowledge of American history than we have right now. But candidly, I think American students ought to have more knowledge of American history than they have right now. So fourth, I think you actually want to make legal visas easier and to get, because today it's absurd how hard it is to get a legal visa to come here to visit legally. Fifth, you ought to be able to deport somebody much easier. If you're a member of an MS-13 gang, for example, which is a violent El Salvadorian gang, we should be able to kick you out of the country. I mean, we shouldn't have to go through some elaborate, complex procedure. I'm going to get to your, once you've done that, the next step, frankly, is to have a guest worker program, which would answer part of your problem, where you have legal guest workers who have a legal guest worker card, and I would have either American Express, Visa, or MasterCard run the program, because they know how to run card programs without fraud, and the federal government doesn't. I mean, the federal government will be a disaster. Once you've done that, you can then have pretty steep penalties for employers who hire people who are not legal, which is a very important part of this. Remember, you don't get illegal workers, and yes, unless you have illegal employers. Finally, you're going to come down to people who are already here. And my position, which some people have been arguing with me about, and some people have been, I think, grotesquely exaggerating, is if you've been here a short time and you have no natural ties, you ought to go home and apply for the guest worker program. If you've been here a long time and you have family and you have children and grandchildren and you belong to a local church, you should be able to apply to a local citizen review board. In order to apply, you should have an American family sponsor you. And that local citizen review board ought to decide, are you a good member of the community? Are you a person who ought to be allowed to stay here? In which case you should be able to get a residency permit that makes you legal. Now, between the guest worker program and the legal residencies, you should not see any great dramatic difference than what you have right now.
Even in small communities in Iowa that depend disproportionately much more heavily on immigrant populations. So, you know, we've got new folks coming in and they haven't been here for 20 years.
Right. So what you would do is you would find a way to get them to go home and get a guest worker permit. You'd apply for the number of guest worker permits you need.
But I'm not asking about them. I'm asking about what would that do to Lamar's? So you're getting 10, 20, perhaps 30% of your population that has to leave, you know.
But they could leave and get it. They could get a permit and come back.
I'm not worried. I'm saying for Lamar's, you know, people are gone. It's happened in communities all over Iowa, and I agree that people should come here legally. But I'm wondering about the communities that are left.
Yeah, I think Lamar's will manage the transition pretty rapidly. I think getting the system to work so everybody who's here is legal, including legal guest workers and people who get legal residence permits, which is not a step towards citizenship. To get citizenship, they'd have to apply from back home and get in line behind everybody else. But to work out a system so we can get away from the illegality will be an enormous benefit to everybody. And if you talk to folks in your police department and in your schools, it'll be an enormous benefit to have everybody be under the law and nobody here illegally. That's my judgment. Yes.